Hey doing everyone, welcome back. I know I haven't posted anything in a few days. Um, that's alright. I've been a little bit busy. I shouldn't be too busy to take at least a few minutes out of my day though to do this. Put something out there. I am recording this on Memorial Day. It is roughly 7 o'clock in the evening where I am here in Iowa as I am recording it. And Memorial Day. That's a big one for me. Of all of the federal holidays, that is probably the most important, actually, to me. As a veteran myself, someone who made it home from places where people I know didn't make it back, that makes this day pretty important to me, right? And, I understand a lot of people think that it's just another long weekend. And, you're out there having your barbecues, fine. Have your barbecues. I don't have any problem with that. Have your barbecues, drink your beer, take advantage of, those Memorial Day sales, on your new mattress or, whatever else, right? That's, it's all fine and good. But is that really what the day's all about? No. And it it does get kind of irritating, but it's so ingrained in our culture, the commercialism and the extended weekend and the official kickoff of summer, or the unofficial kickoff of summer, I guess. But it's so ingrained that we're not going to change it. But at the same time, it's irritating because it detracts from what the day is actually about. It is about honoring those who didn't come home. It's not about veterans like myself. That's what Veterans Day is for. It's not about honoring those who are still serving. That's what Armed Forces Day is for. It's about honoring those who are no longer with us. And that's what I do with Memorial Day. It's actually become a tradition of mine. I know a lot of people visit cemeteries, and a lot of people who visit cemeteries, they don't necessarily visit the graves of those who have served. And that's okay, because maybe you don't have anyone in your family who has. Maybe you don't know someone who has served or who has served and is no longer with us. But I go look for people, and I don't know any of anybody who's buried in the graves that I visited. I don't know any of them. Nope. Wasn't even alive when quite a few of them died. We're talking, some of them were even World War I vets, right? Who died in the 1940s or 50s. 1940s and 50s. My mom was born in the 40s. So, yeah, would I know these people? No. Maybe someone who came home in a box with a flag draped over it from Vietnam. and if they served in, Iraq or Afghanistan, and they're from my area, there's a good chance I wouldn't know them either, because I wasn't living here in this part of Iowa when those wars kicked off, Iraq, Afghanistan. I mean, I was here when the first Gulf War back in the 90s kicked off, but I wasn't old enough to really know anybody from this area who would have gone. So, despite not really knowing anybody in those graves, I go visit them. And, I guess I don't really need to know them. I just know what they did. And I don't even know exactly what they did either. I just know that, whether they even went into a combat zone or not, they're ready to. They sure as hell were ready to, weren't they? So Memorial Day. That's an important one. A lot of graves are, like I said, a lot of Vietnam vets, veterans from Korea, Vietnam, World War II, World War I. People don't remember those guys, Most of them have dates, the Vietnam and Korea, yeah, their graves, they are still alive, dying off all too quickly, but they are still alive, a lot of them. World War II, very few still alive. World War I, no one still alive. And, it's, a lot of them aren't even alive in people's memories anymore, which is truly unfortunate. Even if they're not alive in the memories, they could at least still be alive in stories. And I'll tell you what, whether or not you lost someone who served or not, you've lost someone. And whoever you've lost, don't let that person be lost to history, right? Now, are they going to be lost to, history books? Yeah. Yeah, they'll never be known in history books because just some average person who happened to live. But they can live on in your family history. And the way that happens is through the stories. The stories that you were told, tell them to your kids, to your grandkids. Because that's how people live on. We don't really truly die until the stories of us do. My dad's friend was a Vietnam vet. I was in Iraq and Afghanistan. We had some things in common. And his opinion was that those of us who were in Iraq and Afghanistan actually had it harder than they did in Vietnam. Is that true? Probably not. We had it different. Harder in some ways, not as hard in others. It was different. I mean, you've got your World War I and II vets. I mean, which one was tougher? Neither. They were different. They were different. So, Memorial Day, it's not a happy occasion, and I really wish the phrase Happy Memorial Day would just die out. Yeah, pun somewhat intended, not really, but I wish we would just retire that phrase, because there's nothing happy about Memorial Day. It's a day to honor and to reflect and to observe. Not a day to celebrate. I mean, sure, you can celebrate the lives, but we're not celebrating the day, We are not celebrating the day because people died to make this day even happen, right? To make this country happen. To make this country survive as long as it has. People died. And people who would do it all over again. People who would do it all over again. So I was in the cemetery visiting every veteran's grave I could find, and planting flags on every veteran's grave that didn't have one. And some of the headstones desperately needed some attention. I found a World War I vet who, he died in 1976, but it took me a while to, digging and scrubbing at his headstone. It took me a while to find out when he died. It took a while. Because nobody remembers the guy. Nobody remembers him. And it just kind of got grown over. And that's a sad thing. So, graves like that, yeah, I cleaned them up the best I could. I figured out that he died in 1976. It took me a while to figure out when he was born. I want to say 1901. It was had to be early 1900s, because the war, U.S. involvement in the war, wasn't until, 1917? Yeah, so we weren't there very long, were we? I mean, granted, the war was raging, but the United States wasn't really involved until there was about a year left. So, that's the way I spent the day. So no, it's not a happy day. It's okay to have your barbecues and drink your beer and take advantage of your sales, but that's not what the day is. Remember what this day actually is. I'll catch you next time.